"Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step back. These lines aren't on your property at all." That was the first sentence that cracked Linda's kingdom in half. You could feel the air drain out of the cul-de-sac like someone had popped a balloon. Porch lights flickered on, slippers scuffed across driveways, and within minutes half the neighborhood had gathered in a semicircle around the hood of a county truck. The surveyor unrolled a crisp map beneath the harsh glare of his headlights, and everyone leaned forward like it was a sacred text. My heart thudded, because I already knew what that map showed. It wasn't just an error. It was the end of their little empire. Linda, of course, didn't miss a beat. "That can't be right," she snapped, tugging her robe tighter over her ill-fitting power blouse. "Our subdivision plat has been on record for years. This is just a clerical mistake." She tossed her chin up at me like a stage actress waiting for applause, but no one clapped. The truth was too heavy, printed in black ink on white paper. The HOA prized community of 120 homes wasn't sitting on their land. It was sitting on mine. How did we get here? It started with the letters. Every homeowner in our subdivision knew the weight of a white envelope stamped with Homeowners Association business. Open one, and you could expect to find a fine for garbage cans visible for over 48 hours or unsanctioned holiday inflatables. Mine were worse. Linda's board had decided that my family's land 30 acres bordering the subdivision was blighted. They wanted me to cut down trees, install approved fencing, and even paint all outbuildings in neutral earth tones to match community aesthetics. Never mind that my land wasn't in the HOA. That never mattered to Linda. I pushed back. I sent letters, emails, even read aloud from state statutes at one of their meetings. Linda's reply? A smile that never reached her eyes. "Oh, we'll get this sorted," she'd coo, before slipping another violation notice into my mailbox. It was her game, and she was used to winning. But then the county scheduled a road-widening project and surveyors started poking around. That's when the truth unraveled. The subdivision's original plat was drawn with sloppy measurements. For decades, nobody noticed until a county official with a reflective vest and a laser tool realized that every manicured lawn, every HOA-approved vinyl fence, every two-story McMansion sat on land titled "In My Name." Back in the cul-de-sac, neighbors clustered closer to the truck's headlights, their faces pale and drawn. Someone whispered, "Does this mean my mortgage?" Another cut in, "What about property taxes?" The questions tumbled out, heavy with dread. Linda raised her hands, her voice sharp. "Everyone calm down. This man is mistaken. I'll call our attorney in the morning, and we'll clear this up immediately." She turned toward me, eyes flashing. "And you. You should be ashamed for spreading rumors. You think you can scare people into—" "Linda," I interrupted, loud enough that everyone froze. "This isn't about rumors. It's about deeds. You've been running your HOA on land that never belonged to you." The surveyor tapped his map with a pencil, his tone dry but firm. "He's not wrong. According to the county's records, the deeded property lines place this subdivision well within his parcel. Unless the chain of title says otherwise, ownership is his." Gasps rippled through the group. A woman clutched her husband's arm. A teenager muttered, "Wait, so, like, our whole house is on the wrong land?" Linda puffed herself up, her bun quivering with indignation. "Don't listen to this nonsense. Titles, deeds, plats, this is all paperwork that can be corrected." But I saw it in her eyes. Panic. Real, undeniable panic. For years, she had weaponized paperwork against us. Fines, notices, bylaws quoted out of context. And now, in one night, the paperwork turned on her. Neighbors didn't disperse. They lingered in clumps, whispering under the glow of porch lights. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass and barbecue gone cold, but beneath it was something sour. Fear. Their HOA fees, their mortgages, even their sense of belonging. It was all suddenly fragile. One man, usually silent at meetings, finally spoke up. "If this is true, then what happens to us? Do we own anything?" His voice cracked on the last word. Linda didn't answer. She just clutched her binder tighter, the vinyl creaking in her grip. I let the silence hang, heavy and deliberate. Then I said, "Tomorrow we'll see what the courthouse records confirm. But tonight you should all know the truth. This neighborhood was built on stolen ground, and I have no intention of letting that go." The crowd broke into a low hum of disbelief and unease. Linda opened her mouth to retort, but nothing came out. For once, the queen of bylaws was speechless. The surveyor rolled up his map, tossed it into the truck, and gave me a nod that said everything. This wasn't going away. Headlights flicked off, leaving us in the cool, still dark. The only sound was the wind pushing through the trees, my trees, standing tall at the edge of the subdivision like sentinels waiting for a command. And in that silence, I knew the battle had only just begun. You can't outlawyer the deed, Linda. The land was never yours. That was the line that stopped her mid-rant, her binder clutched to her chest like a shield. The clubhouse, usually a space for bake sales and bingo nights, had transformed into a courtroom circus. Folding chairs screeched as neighbors shifted, torn between loyalty to the HOA queen and the gnawing fear that their homes might be sitting on sand. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sickly glow on faces lined with doubt. Even the coffee machine sputtered in the corner, as if it didn't want to be part of this disaster. I didn't need to raise my voice. The silence that followed did all the work for me. Linda had stormed in earlier, heels clicking against the linoleum with the confidence of a dictator marching to the podium. Her blazer, stiff at the shoulders, did her no favors, but she wore it like battle armor. "This association," she barked, waving her thick binder of bylaws like a holy book, "was built on community sovereignty. No outsider will dictate our future." She pointed at me with such venom you'd think I'd spray-painted her garage door. "We will fight this, and we will win. I am calling an emergency vote to authorize legal defense funds." The room was packed tighter than I'd ever seen. People stood along the walls, clutching styrofoam cups, sweat glistening under the flickering lights. Some nodded along to Linda's theatrics, but others stared at the floor, chewing their lips. The word mortgage hung in the air like a curse. I leaned back in my chair, letting her dig deeper. For years, I'd been on the receiving end of her speeches. She'd scolded me for failing to maintain the community's visual harmony. She'd fined a neighbor for planting sunflowers instead of HOA-approved azaleas. And she once demanded a man repaint his garage because the beige he chose was too yellow. Those nights I bit my tongue, but not tonight. Tonight, I had the filings. When she finally slammed her binder shut for dramatic effect, I rose slowly, every eye following me. My voice was calm. "Linda, you can call as many votes as you like, but you can't vote away property law. The subdivision plat was filed wrong, and the county surveyor confirmed it. This land," I tapped the folder I carried, "is deeded to me. Your empire is built on my ground." A gasp swept the room. A woman near the back muttered, "Oh my God." Another whispered, "Does that mean foreclosure?" Linda shot back, her voice shrill. "Do not let him scare you. Titles can be corrected, clerical errors fixed. We will challenge this in court." She jabbed a manicured finger toward me. "This is a shakedown." I opened my folder and slid a stamped legal filing across the folding table in front of her. The sound of paper hitting metal was louder than any gavel. "Not a shakedown, a quiet title action, filed last week. Every property here is listed." For the first time, Linda's lips faltered. The muscles around her jaw twitched. She tried to recover, but the whispers in the room swelled louder than her voice. "If he wins, what happens to us?" a man asked, eyes wide. "Do we lose everything?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence told them enough. Linda puffed out her chest, her voice quivering with rage now. "We will raise fees. We will retain the best counsel. This parasite will not destroy our community." But the neighbors weren't looking at her anymore. They were looking at me, and more importantly, at the filing in front of her. Some looked angry, some terrified, some oddly relieved, like they'd been waiting years for the curtain to finally rip down. The tension in the clubhouse was suffocating. The smell of burnt coffee and floor cleaner clung to the air. Someone shifted in their chair, the squeal echoing like a scream. Then one voice broke through. "Linda," a woman near the front said, her tone sharp, "you told us everything was secure. You promised this subdivision was ironclad. Now you're telling us we might have to pay you more money so you can keep fighting a deed that isn't even ours?" Murmurs of agreement rippled. A man folded his arms and nodded. Another crossed her arms tight against her chest. The cracks in Linda's kingdom were no longer whispers. They were fissures. I stood quietly, watching it spread. Her authority had always been absolute, built on fear, fines, and thick packets of bylaws, but now it looked flimsy, like a sandcastle bracing against the tide. Linda tried to rally, slamming her binder again. "We will not be intimidated." But the words rang hollow. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to flicker in doubt. That's when I leaned in, lowering my voice so everyone had to strain to hear. "You've built your whole empire on my land, Linda, and sooner than you think the tide's going to wash it all away." The room fell still. The sound of her binder creaking under her white-knuckled grip filled the silence. She opened her mouth, but no words came. And that's where we left it on the knife's edge. The vote hanging in the air. Neighbors shifting between fury and fear. The whole subdivision realizing their fortress wasn't stone at all. It was sand, and the water was already rising. "The bylaws are clear," the judge said, voice echoing in the courtroom. "In the event of encroachment, the association shall be required to compensate the rightful landowner for all improvements constructed on their property." It landed like a thunderclap. Linda's lips parted, her eyes wide behind the glare of the courthouse fluorescents. A ripple of gasps spread across the gallery as neighbors clutched purses, whispered to spouses, and stared at me like I had just detonated a bomb in the middle of their suburban utopia. The truth wasn't just about boundaries or deeds anymore, it was about money. A staggering, devastating amount of money. Their manicured lawns, their vinyl fences, their precious cul-de-sac playground, all of it came with a price tag. And I was holding the receipt. The courthouse smelled of wood polish and old paper, a faint tang of nerves hanging in the air. Linda had arrived in full battle regalia, navy skirt suit, pearls, and that trusty binder swollen with years of citations and meeting minutes. She strutted past me that morning with the confidence of a queen entering her throne room. "Our attorney will dismantle this nonsense," she hissed under her breath, binder thudding against her hip. "You won't take this community down with your tricks." I didn't reply. I just slid my filings across to the clerk and took my seat. For weeks leading up to that morning, the neighborhood had been unraveling. Lawn signs disappeared overnight. Whispers spread in driveways and at backyard cookouts. What if he wins? Do we have to pay him rent? Could we lose our homes? The HOA board scrambled to hold meetings, but each one spiraled into chaos. A man in a baseball cap once stood up and shouted, "I didn't pay $300 a month for this," before storming out. The cracks had widened into craters, and Linda could barely paper over them with promises of litigation victories. The turning point came when my attorney dug into their own rulebook. The bylaws, Linda's favorite weapon, contained a clause she had never bothered to understand. Buried in Article 9, Section 14, a contingency for encroachments or improper sightings, requiring the HOA to compensate any landowner affected by construction errors. Not optional, mandatory. So when the judge read it aloud, it wasn't my voice bringing her down. It was hers. Her own words, her own sacred binder, twisted back against her. Linda sprang to her feet, her pearl necklace bouncing against her collarbone. "Your Honor, that clause was never meant for this situation is entirely different. The association acted in good faith." The judge raised a hand, silencing her. "Intent is irrelevant. The clause is plain. This association is liable for compensation. The extent of damages will be determined in subsequent proceedings. The gallery erupted in whispers. A man in the second row muttered, "Compensation? For every house?" His wife gripped his arm like the bench was tilting beneath them. Another neighbor covered her mouth, eyes brimming with panic. The word foreclosure hung in the air, unspoken but understood. Linda collapsed back into her seat, binder sliding from her lap to the floor with a dull thud. For the first time in years, she looked small, shrunken behind her fortress of bylaws. She glanced around the room for support, but the faces that once nodded dutifully at her every word now stared at her with betrayal. I leaned forward slightly, keeping my voice calm, measured. "This wasn't a trick, Linda. It was always there. You just never thought the rules applied to you." She shot me a look sharp enough to cut glass, but it bounced off. The damage was done. The judge moved briskly, entering dates for hearings, outlining procedural steps, and dismissing the case for the day. But nobody heard him. The neighbors were too busy calculating in their heads. Mortgage balances, savings accounts, retirement funds. The weight of it pressed into the room until even the bailiff seemed uneasy. As we filed out into the courthouse lobby, the blue glow of flashing police lights from the street outside caught Linda's glasses, turning her eyes into twin orbs of cold fire. She clutched her binder like a life raft, but I knew she was sinking. A group of neighbors confronted her near the doors. "You said this couldn't happen," one snapped. "You told us the title company cleared everything," another added. "Do you realize what this means for us?" Linda stammered, words tumbling out without order. "We'll appeal. We'll restructure the budget. The association will not collapse." But their faces told the story. Her reign was over, not with applause, not with dignity, but with suspicion and rage. The queen of fines and lawn citations had become the architect of their ruin. I stepped past the group, feeling their eyes shift to me, heavy with blame and desperation. For a moment, no one said a word. Then a neighbor asked, voice trembling, "What happens now?" I didn't answer. I just pushed open the courthouse doors and let the autumn air hit me like a victory march. The scent of damp leaves and car exhaust filled my lungs. Behind me, Linda's voice cracked, shouting something about unity and resilience, but it was drowned out by the murmurs of those who finally saw the truth. And as I walked down those courthouse steps, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This was only the beginning.